afternoon and welcome on behalf of the EuroTech Universities Alliance to this deep dive on clean hydrogen, repowering a sustainable society. My name is Jackie Davis. I will have the privilege of moderating our discussion this afternoon. We're going to have in a moment some brief welcoming remarks, then a presentation to provide some context for our discussion, and then a totally interactive panel debate, during which time you can ask questions in writing. I'll tell you how to do that a little bit later on. But first, let me give the floor to Tatiana Pantelli, head of the EuroTech Brussels office, to welcome you more formally and to open proceedings. Tatiana, thank you so much for hosting us today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you for everybody for being with us today. We hope and we are sure for a really interesting discussion on this technology, clean hydrogen. It's an important one, and I try in a couple of minutes to explain why. Of course, the world is facing the major challenge of climate change. For example, the new report from UN Climate Change from 26th of October this year shows countries are bending the curve of global greenhouse gas emissions downwards, but underlines that these efforts remain insufficient to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. And of course, that's what we all agree, all our politicians agree to achieve. The report also shows that current commitments will increase emission by 10.6% by 2030 compared to 2010 level. And this is good news. It's a slight improvement, but still it's absolutely not enough. For continued long-term reduction, there is a need for structural and transformational change in our global energy production, consumption, and underlying social economic systems. The energy transformation requires a major shift in electricity generation from fossil fuel to renewable sources, also greater energy efficiency and the widespread electrification of energy uses from cars to heating and cooling in buildings. Still, not all sectors or industries can easily make the switch from fossil fuels to electricity. And of course, this is very important, specifically in our days, considering the war situation and problems with energy. The International Renewable Energy Agency suggests that the clean hydrogen can provide a link between growing and sustainable renewable electricity generation and the hard to electrify sectors. We all know that those sectors like steel, cement, chemicals, long-haul road transport, is very difficult to achieve energy efficiency there. Nevertheless, clean hydrogen will have to overcome several barriers to fulfill its full potential. And of course, one of them is cost. But there are others, and they include lack of dedicated infrastructure, lack of value recognition, energy losses, and of course, sustainability must be ensured also. In Europe, we are doing a lot already to accelerate transition to clean hydrogen. This technology is at the core of the REPowerEU Plan and the Fit for 55 package, major initiatives within the European Green Deal. In EuroTech, we have many examples of how research can contribute to this ambition as well, from recovering CO2 dissolved in seawater as a building block for the production of synthetic fuels. Our École Polytechnique is doing this, or creating energy islands at DTU and enabling affordable green hydrogen production at scale at Technion. But do we have all the necessary ingredients to achieve our ambitions? And how far or how close, hopefully, are we in getting there? At the event today, we would like to invite you to discuss together with our panelists how we can reduce some of the barriers on the way to the wide uptake of clean hydrogen in Europe specifically, focusing on the role of the universities and their ecosystem, which of course include companies. And we very much welcome contributions from the policymakers. we're in it together, and we cannot achieve it in one sector or another. Some very clever people, Greek people, actually said that a society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shades they shall never sit. So I hope that we can plant more of those trees. We already started doing this, and we continue doing this even more successfully. Please participate in the discussion. As Jackie said, we would like it to be interactive, and we are very much looking forward to your participation. And now I will pass the mic to Jackie and our keynote speaker. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, and underlying just how important this issue is, and that crucial question, as Tatiana put it, do we have the right ingredients, the necessary ingredients to achieve the ambitions? How far away are we, or how far close, whether you're glass half full or glass empty, are we to getting there, and what can we do to reduce the barriers and foster the uptake of clean hydrogen? And all, as you say, within the context of what you, the EuroTech universities, do, those leading universities of science and technology. Later on in our discussion, during the panel, if you want to ask questions, please you go into slido.com and use the hashtag hydrogen4Europe. And please, in putting your question, please be as brief as you can, so I can see at a glance what your question is and who it is for. And if you want to tweet out about what we are discussing, get that clean hydrogen message out, please use the same hashtag. So just to repeat, hydrogen4Europe. It's now my pleasure to set the scene for us. Tatiana said clean hydrogen is at the core of the REPowerEU Plan. So first we're going to hear a little bit more about that plan, about the role of hydrogen within it. Delighted to welcome Dr. Tudor Constantinescu, Principal Advisor to the Director General in the Directorate General for Energy in the European Commission, to set the scene for us. Tudor, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jackie, for introduction and for the invitation. Thank you very much to EuroTech universities for the opportunity to join you today online, and to say a few words about clean hydrogen in the REPowerEU Plan, and about hydrogen in EU energy policies in general, and where we are and how we see the journey ahead. What I would like to underline that is hydrogen is one of the key opportunities in our view for achieving climate neutrality by 2050. As you know, the key objective of the Green Deal, as it was launched by our President von der Leyen. And in this context, research and innovation is essential to support technological development and demonstration, both for hydrogen production and use in fuel cells or other technologies in Europe. There are major challenges and opportunities, and we are looking into them, and I will try to pass quickly over the next slide. So if you can, let me put this, first of all, in the context of the Green Deal. As I said, Green Deal is at the forefront of our actions. And here, it's a climate neutrality by 2050. But what I would like to underline is more ambitious plans already for 2030, which translated in that package, which I referred to, the Fit for 55. The 55% greenhouse gas emission reductions already by 2030. And to materialize this, we came already in the beginning of this commission with two important communications, which still paves the way also today in the more ambitious plans. One is energy system integration, and the other one is the hydrogen strategy. So why is this so important? Because the Green Deal with these 2030 targets actually try to put not only the carbon on top of our agenda, but also the issue of competitiveness, the issue of modernizing the economy of investments in order to address the fact that energy infrastructure in Europe is aging, while at the same time new technologies have developed and became more competitive. And in this context, we need a more integrated approach to the energy system. It was mentioned, I think also mentioned before, we'll need in 2050 also both electrons and molecules. Now, about 25% electrons and 75% molecules. By 2050, we expect to have maybe around half. But it's important that both are decarbonized. So that we speak about electricity, or that we speak about synthetic fuels, or we speak about hydrogen, which is at the basis of synthetic fuels and synthetic gases, as well as biogas and biomass, will have to contribute to the decarbonization of the entire economy. And the system is more complex, and we have to, first of all, wherever possible, use electricity directly, but we'll also need to use renewables to produce hydrogen and produce these synthetic gases and fuels. For this reason, hydrogen becoming a very important component in the future energy mix. That's why, together with the hydrogen strategy, we came at the same time with energy system integration. We came with a hydrogen strategy with concrete objective and targets, including the 40 gigawatts by 2030, with plans concretely how to scale up in the sector's carbon-intensive industries, in transport, heavy duty, in particular, maritime, gradually moving also into aviation, because renewable hydrogen offers clearly possibilities to decarbonize sectors which otherwise would be difficult to decarbonize. So this is something which we looked very important, and we put these targets, including the targets for hydrogen production and for together with gigawatt installed capacities. At the same time, we came with a partnership on industries, a clean hydrogen partnership. And this is very important. I'll refer to this in a few moments. To translate the hydrogen strategy, next slide, we came, and the energy system integration strategy, actually we came with a number of actions. In fact, in total about 40 actions for energy system integration, about 20 for hydrogen. On the next slide, trying to anchor this strategy on all important pillars, to have an investment agenda where we underline the fact that actually the biggest share of investments will go in producing renewables necessary to produce hydrogen, and then in electrolyzers themselves through the infrastructure and the storage, boosting demand and scaling up production, and looking at the instruments which we can use for this, developing the hydrogen infrastructure and markets, of course, continuing to push research and innovation, which proved to be very important over the years and made Europe at the forefront on the international scene, for which we also have a special chapter on international dimension. We have a number of instruments of institutional settings for all this, and we started to review the legislative framework, which is very important for all this, including with renewable directive, but not only. So on the next slide, you see what we have identified also for in terms of research innovation, and the meeting today is very much about this. We have looked at what needs to be done also in respect of scaling up production of infrastructure, of application, cross-cutting areas. What are the research needs, what we need to achieve? And very important, the partnerships we made with industry, with the research community, with universities over the years started to give us the results, because just 10, 15 years ago, the electrolyzers were 10, 15 kilowatts. Now we have projects of 100 megawatts under construction, which is really important. And that's why the partnership we built in this respect proved to be very, very relevant. And of course, now we have to move to a scale ahead. And this is not just to have this partnership for research only, but also with the industry for scaling up and for delivering on our plans. So if you look at the next slide, basically refer to this Clean Hydrogen Alliance and also to the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, which is a successor for research of the joint fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking. That's speaking about the alliance. Here we have more than 1,400 stakeholders organized around 6 roundtables, which look at the entire value chain, energy production, transport and distribution, mobility, building, industrial applications. And they already identified a lot of projects going up to 60 gigawatts, and almost 90% are renewable hydrogen, which is a target of the hydrogen strategies on the renewable hydrogen, while enabling and understanding that in a transition will also need other forms of low carbon hydrogen, but the targets are for renewable hydrogen because the long-term perspective is also for 2050, the renewables moving into the center stage of the energy system and really supporting decarbonization, but also the other aspects related to competitiveness, to job creation, and now more than in the past, the part I will refer to security of supply, where hydrogen will need to scale up also from this perspective. The joint undertaking now has already financed a lot of projects, as you can see here across Europe, and now in the next period, we'll continue to focus and to develop more, in particular, hydrogen valleys. We aim now, and in the context of REPowerEU, actually I refer to, we will aim to have at least one hydrogen valley per member state, but of course we'll have more in many more advanced member states, and we'll also start to have cross-country hydrogen valleys, which is equally important because the resources, the industrial clusters are not always just in one location. So, but all these things and all these targets and all these changes we started to do to the legislation, starting with the renewable directive, where for creating the demand, we put the target of 50% renewable hydrogen for industry, 2.4% for transport. Now we had to revamp them. We had to revamp them, and at the same time to look at what we did cross-cutting. If you speak about taxation, if we speak about state aid, all these elements supporting renewables, supporting energy storage in general, and hydrogen also in particular. But due to the invasion of Russia in Ukraine in February this year, in May we came with a REPowerEU Plan, and it was this commitment at head of states and the government's level to move away from this dependence on fossil fuels, and in particular from Russia, well before 2030, and to try to develop an economy which is clearly accelerating the energy transition, but becoming also more competitive, more sustainable, and less vulnerable, because we need to address this issue of vulnerability for all our citizens. And therefore, the REPowerEU came, REPowerEU with more ambitious plans, the next slide, with main objectives, as I mentioned, of getting out of this dependence on fossil fuels, notably from Russia, limiting also, on the other hand, the impact of high energy prices. We started to witness already since last year, end of last year, but now even more, accelerating the rollout of renewable energy and energy efficiency, and reinforcing our preparedness and the contingencies. Of course, we need to look at short-term measures, including the energy storage, including the gas storage, and limiting the impact of energy prices. But we have also to look a bit more into the future, and in addition to also saving energy, to see what are the sources of energy we can count. And here hydrogen comes as a potential important solution for the energy system, not only for 2050, but already for 2030. But for this, we need to scale up. And therefore, the proposal is to double the renewable production almost at EU level, from 5.6 to about 10 million tons renewable hydrogen, plus an objective to make Europe also the biggest importer of renewable hydrogen, the biggest market of renewable hydrogen in the world, and to enable the import of up to 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen by 2030. For this purpose, our President von der Leyen recently also announced, among other instruments, a hydrogen bank to support these endeavors. And I have to say, speaking about all the rules we put in place and legislation, we will come also with gas decarbonization and hydrogen package, which is under construction now, and where we try to look on how to put in balance the needs for developing a market which is still in its incipient stage, with the rules and the regulations which are necessary to ensure that this market will be fully functional and fully competitive towards 2030 and after. So this is where we try to put a lot of attention now, and the things are going in terms of the work for developing the necessary legislative provisions. And here we speak about possibilities, limited possibilities to blending, but also repurposing existing infrastructure, in particular transmission level, about the access to this infrastructure before 2030 and after 2030. As I said, we want to put in place a regulatory system in such a way, and this is valid also for when we speak about renewable hydrogen and the famous delegated acts connected with the Renewables Directive. We want to find the right balance in order to steer the market developments, but to ensure that at the end of the day, we'll have what we aim to have, renewable hydrogen mainly, and also low carbon hydrogen in the transition, and able to certify all this and able to ensure that the market really pays for these characteristics and enables their utilization as appropriate for the purposes of decarbonization as well. But now, with REPowerEU, it is this important dimension also of energy security, because hydrogen can become a fuel which to support not only the energy transition, but also the security, energy security of Europe. For this, we also secured a number of funding. Of course, it will be mainly the private sector, because we speak here about hundreds of billions of euros, and it's not through public money that we can secure all that. But public money can secure driving the market, initiating projects, leveraging, and giving the necessary confidence and predictability together with the legislative framework and regulations in terms of permitting, among others, to the investors. On the next slide, I refer briefly to these opportunities, and now we speak about recovery and resilience facility. And here we have over 9, I think now it's almost approaching 10 billion euros, which member states allocate for hydrogen projects. Then we have all the structural funds, which are also very important, plus a smart specialization platform, which is trying to bring the innovation dimension and really to make best use of the resources, but also of the technologies and know-how and intelligence we have in the various regions. The modernization fund, the CEF, on which as of next year we'll have the first list, and as of 2024 start to finance also hydrogen projects. The InvestEU program, also a lot of technical assistance, plus of course the research and innovation, where in particular the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, which had already a first important call, and the EU Innovation Fund, which will also supply this political instrument, which is a hydrogen bank. At the same time, we need to make sure that we go along our promises also globally to support developing this renewable hydrogen market in particular, and therefore we engage a lot with partners, in particular in south of Europe, but not only, also in the neighborhood, and when time allows also with Ukraine, to tap the potential for renewable hydrogen, to support them to invest, first of all, for themselves, but also to increase its capacities and potentially to export hydrogen, as Europe will become a market for hydrogen. But we see there are many countries around the globe who would be willing to invest and to become hydrogen exporters. And it's clear we'll need to continue to develop partnership in these respects with many countries, plus other instruments like this along the line of for example, the Hydrogen Global. Therefore, we look into the various options for the bank, where we should have both a domestic and maybe also an international dimension in terms of how we capitalize on the opportunities that hydrogen, and in particular renewable hydrogen, can bring. On next slide, you see that I mentioned a little bit these international partnerships and the support Green Hydrogen Partnership can bring, including this Global European Hydrogen Facility. The Commission is supporting a number of corridors, notably what I was mentioning, Mediterranean, but also North Sea and Ukraine. And I have to mention here also the stronger and stronger link with renewables. You see, for example, the offshore renewable communication which we have, and for which hydrogen can also be a driver to install more renewables and to make them more competitive and to secure that we can integrate them effectively, because we speak about 70% renewable now with the new target we have under REPowerEU in electricity system by 2030. It's clear that hydrogen will have to play a key role in all this. And for this, we also develop a lot of work with the Clean Energy Ministerial, which we have, for example, in hydrogen initiative, which we co-lead with United States, with Canada, with Netherlands, and with Japan. And where, for example, we work with Netherlands in particular on developing the trade rules, also on ports. And we have a ports coalition, which was launched by our commissioner, Carrie Simpson, a year ago. And we have now 60 ports already around the globe, which are committed and working to develop a framework and also conditions and plans to secure this global hydrogen market. We have the mission innovation, where we promoted more the concept of hydrogen valleys, which came from our joint undertaking initially from the research dimension. We have the international partnership on hydrogen economy, where again we speak about trade, but also about certification and methodologies for greenhouse gas emission calculations, a task force that we co-lead together with France. And of course, the work of the IEA and of IRENA, which are so important in the global review, but also in the analysis of the potential for hydrogen production in all countries which have a renewable potential as well, which should be growing in the coming years. So this is in maybe a limited time what I would have liked to set the scene, and to underline that all this will require additional research, additional innovative solutions, being in the EU, being outside the EU, in our partner countries. And we are very much engaged to support this cooperation and also to steer innovation and to encourage it, because this is what will, in the end of the day, bring forward the agenda and the solutions which will deliver a carbon neutral continent in the most cost-effective way, and answering also the challenges of competitiveness and of affordability, of public acceptance, that are so much important in our days to pave the way ahead. Thank you very much for.
Thank you very much indeed, Tudor. So setting out there those key goals of the REPowerEU and that central role for hydrogen, but also the key actions that you're taking in order to deliver on those goals, deliver on those ambitions, those ingredients Tatiana talked about earlier, and ending there by underlining that central role for research and innovation, which is what we want to focus on in our panel. We're very grateful to you, Tudor. Thank you so much for joining us today, and joining me now to delve in more depth into the role of research and innovation in the implementation of the REPowerEU Plan. Delighted to welcome Enrico De Giorgis, Policy Officer for Clean Hydrogen and Wind Energy in the Directorate General for Research and Innovation in the European Commission. Very warm welcome to you, Enrico. We have Anja Fass, who is Head of the Professorship for Environmental and Development Economics at the TUM campus Straubing. We also have Sotiria Languvardu, who is a naval architect and marine engineer and a PhD student from the Technical University of Denmark, DTU. Samuel Sisset, who is Research Program Portfolio Manager, Thermal and Supply, Green Hydrogen at ENGIE Research and Innovation. Great to have you with us, Samuel. And Cédric Tarr, who is Director of Molecular Chemistry Laboratory at the École Polytechnique, with us as well. Cédric, a very warm welcome to you. Totally interactive discussion. Remember, if you have a question, I see some are already coming in. Hydrogen4 Europe would be the hashtag to get into slido.com. But I have some questions for our panel to get us started. So a very warm welcome, and let us jump in and really start where Tudor ended, panel, when he talked about the vital need for those additional research, innovative solutions. He said, because without it, we cannot answer this challenge. So for each of you, with your different hats on, and maybe Enrico, I'll come to you at the end to react a little bit and add to what Tudor said. But Anja, from your perspective and from a University of Science and Technology perspective, how do you see the role of universities like yours, researchers like you, in building that, generally, that more competitive, more sustainable, less vulnerable energy system that Tudor talked about, and specifically when it comes to the rollout of clean hydrogen? What is that role?
Thank you, Jackie. Yes, and what you just said, and also was saying in the beginning, we should have a look at the entire value chain, the supply chain of energy, from production to storage, infrastructure, and of course consumption, to have an overview. And their research can do a lot, not only like the basic research on how chemically or from the energetic point of view to produce green or clean hydrogen and other green sources, but to have a view on the cost on upscaling, which region should we start to upscale, where's the need so that hydrogen really can be used efficiently and profitably, and in the end the final consumer, which was also here seeing in the chat on the question on is it affordable later on for the consumer, who is the consumer who starts to consume green hydrogen. And these questions cannot be seen individually, they have to be seen in the whole supply chain, the whole track. And their interdisciplinary research, with having more than one discipline, like we are here at the EuroTech Alliance, cover all the aspects together and not having 3 years the one question and 3 years the others. I think this is really important where research can contribute to.
Thank you very much. And Soteria, build that picture in terms of the role that you and researchers like you can play, and also the challenges as you see them ahead.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, I agree. The role of research and innovation in general, and in particular universities of science and technology, is crucial for achieving the goals of the REPowerEU Plan. We are facing an increasing pressure to accelerate our decarbonization efforts, and research can only assist in that end and pave the way towards climate change mitigation. And also, with the current geopolitical issues and the arising risks, it is urgent that we find flexible and diverse energy supplies for Europe. And I believe that researchers with their innovative thinking and cross-cutting skills are able to accelerate the upscaling of efficient and cost-competitive energy power systems.
Thank you very much, and we'll come back to what you need and what support you need in order to be able to do that. But Samuel, from an industry perspective, and you're, I mentioned earlier, from the involved in you're the research program portfolio manager, the importance of research and innovation, and how do you see the challenge ahead in order to ensure, as Tudor put it, that we really do get those new solutions, additional solutions that we're going to need in order to meet this challenge?
A lot has already been said, but research and innovation, either public or private doesn't matter, will play, and it is already playing a key role in speeding up the clean transition, or the energy transition to the clean energy. This goes through the development and optimization of clean technologies with higher energy efficiencies, and this is important, at an acceptable and affordable price for the final end user. And this has already been said. Coming to the topics of today's debates, clean hydrogen, I think the key challenge is to be addressed how to bring the cost of technology down. This was already mentioned by Tatiana. Like, for example, for the green hydrogen production from renewable energy, and this is key. And research and innovation will clearly play a key role. Meanwhile, demand needs to be created or expanded to drive the cost down. And if we want to have project at scale as well, at gigawatt scale, and this was mentioned by Tudor.
Thank you very much indeed. Cedric, continue to build our picture in terms of the challenge ahead and how you see your role and the role of universities like yours.
Thank you very much, Jackie. So I do agree, of course, with all my colleagues. So just to add up a little bit of thoughts through this discussion, I wanted to discuss also the fact that we need to train quite a bit of people for the next few years to fill up universities and industries. So that means that we need to train some students, as Anya said, with multidisciplinary aspects, not only on specifics like a chemistry or physicist or mechanics, but also students who would have a broad idea about the general challenges. I think like most of the young students now, they are quite aware about the problematics that we are facing, but to give them also the tools to tackle these kind of problems in terms of like basic science, but also engineering aspects, I think it's quite important, and it's going to be quite challenging, I think, for the next 10 years probably.
And an interesting point there, because talking about, obviously it's part of your job to produce those new generations of young people with the skills we need, but also I would like to come back, if we could later on, to your role in lifelong learning, in accompanying industry and making sure that they have the skills, and those skills are adapted and developed as we go along. But this issue of costs that you've all raised, question from our audience, as someone pointed out, but let me just read it out: will accelerating the rollout of renewable energy technologies in large scale make electricity more expensive for citizens? I want to come back on that cost issue, but before, Enrico, for you, is this cost issue for you the biggest challenge? What do you see as the key challenge ahead that research and innovation can help us to answer?
I think I agree with the ones speaking before me. I mean, all the key points I think have already been mentioned. Cost is, of course, one essential point, but also we are now especially thinking of REPowerEU. REPowerEU is basically a strategy in the short and medium term, because it's an acceleration to become independent from Russian fossil fuels in the short term, and so the need is really to have a lot of renewables in place to produce green hydrogen, and there we need. I mean, many technologies are already there, but we need to prove their durability, their manufacturability, so to be able to scale up with those technologies. So. In the short and medium term. And then again, as already mentioned, the need to have skilled people, trained people to do this and to accompany the transition to this new clean energy system.
Lovely. I want to come back, as I say, on all of these things. And you talk there about many of the technologies are there, but we need to prove their durability, their marketability. And I think something like, it is estimated about half the technologies that we actually will need to get that full decarbonisation are there. What for each of you, and Tatiana started by talking about the barriers, and she mentioned some of them, and so did Tudor. Cost, you've all mentioned. Infrastructure, another one that Tatiana touched on, but also Tudor, and this issue of scaling up. What for each of you, and let me go a little bit the other way round. Cedric, what is the biggest barrier, the biggest hurdle we need to overcome? And for you as a researcher, what is the biggest challenge for you in playing your part in meeting and addressing those issues?
So myself, so I'm an electrochemist, so I'm more interested into electrolysis of water, for instance. So it's a way to split water, give oxygen and hydrogen. And most of the research and my research colleagues are working on trying to get rid of some expensive catalysts that are used to run this kind of reaction. And so one of the key issue that we are seeing in the lab is that on a small scale, that is actually what is happening in Europe. It's possible to use expensive materials to run those reactions, but when we are going to upscale all of this hydrogen production, we are going to have a lot of issues regarding the need of noble metals such as platinum easily in Europe, and that we need to find some other ways to be able to run those kind of reaction, and that could be problematic pretty soon. At the moment, it's not a problem in terms of electrolysis. The main issue, as we said, it was the price of electricity and how we can get electricity. But on a more middle term or long term, it might be also an issue, the cost of the materials to build those electrolyzers.
Thank you very much. Samuel, for you, the key challenges, what for you are the barriers that are most holding us back, that we're going to have to address if we're going to get this? I mean, those targets, 10 million tons domestic renewable hydrogen production, 10 million tons imports. What are the biggest challenges to meet those targets, do you think?
for me, the biggest challenge will be to have enough or large volume of hydrogen available on the market. It can be produced in Europe, of course, and related to the question which is in the chat, we can also import hydrogen from abroad. And I was thinking about importing hydrogen from South America, for example, or Australia. We can think about producing e-molecule. E-molecule means e-methane or e-methanol or ammonia, and this could be one way to produce or to import hydrogen. So the challenge so is to have technology available to produce at cost e-molecules and to feed and to supply the European market as well.
And you mentioned questions in the chat, of course, and Tudor touched on that point about hydrogen import corridors in the Mediterranean, in the North Sea. Someone in our audience saying, should the European hydrogen backbone reach further south than currently planned and include regions with cheap renewables such as the Middle East? I throw that into the mix. But Soteria, for you, the biggest barriers that we're going to need to address, going beyond costs, which you already all mentioned.
Talking from a shipping perspective, I would say it's global availability and affordability. We touched about, but it's hydrogen is planning to become a very important key player for supporting alternative marine bunker fuels in the future, because it is expected to become a feedstock for the production of ammonia or other synthetic fuels, but also it can be used in fuel cells for auxiliary power on board. After all, it's expected that hydrogen and the shipping sector will also be involved in transporting hydrogen to other markets, and vessels can carry hydrogen on board as cargo and be part of this global hydrogen supply chain. So universities and especially the University of Science and Technology can address, for example, hydrogen storage capabilities on board, safety procedures for hydrogen handling operations, and some special material selections for securing that hydrogen can be transported on board ships. And I would also say that in order for shipping sector to utilize hydrogen's potential, we need to secure that its liquefaction process has to be become in a very optimal way.
Anya, complete the picture for us, if you would, in terms of the barriers as you see them, and particularly barriers in areas where universities like yours can really make a difference.
Yeah, in addition to what the others already said, we have to think about our international role. We will see that the supply of energy, Middle East, the recent decades, we sourced our energy from, and Russia. Now there will be a big change. And the question is, who will be the major hubs of producing, for example, green hydrogen? What will be the role of Europe? Australia is very much forward in that track. What can we learn from them, or they maybe learn from us? So I think there needs to be an exchange of knowledge and cooperation, which the universities are doing already with Canada, with other countries, to get the best out of it. But in addition to that, on the production structure, the supply, the transport of hydrogen, we have to think about, of course, governance, political implications, where the European Union plays a very important role. Which umbrella will be set? Any types of subsidies? In infrastructure, who's building the infrastructure? Is it a governmental task? Is it European task? How public-private partnership comes into play here? So how the risk is shared, I mean, we see this, the times of uncertainty, I mean, they are central at the moment. Like we do not know what the prices are in a few months, even the consumer do not know. So how can we plan now for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years? And there to set a governmental umbrella, I think to rely on and to know, okay, when I do a scale up, when I do a huge investment, how I'm secured against uncertainties. This is also where we are being an economist and discussing with political decision makers. This is really a core issue for large scale investments.
Thank you. And Enrico, Tudor talked earlier, and Anya, they're referring to this European leadership role, global leadership role, and Trude talked about the importance of maintaining that and strengthening that. He also talked about international partnerships, and that links to that question from the audience. What do you think is key if we are to maintain our leadership in research and innovation, and not just in developing those innovations, but also in producing, in doing it in Europe?
Yeah, I think, again, thinking at the short and medium term, what Anya just mentioned is key. So to give some certainty. I think now really the need is to have some certainty for operators to take their decision, for investors to take their decisions. So certainty in many ways. So it is, at the moment, is not clear, completely clear, the legal framework. So this has to be clarified, which also linked to the permitting process. So this is another point. And then we don't have yet a clear definition of what clean hydrogen is. And we need calculation methods to assess the emissions, the carbon footprint of hydrogen. So all these pieces have to be clarified to ensure some certainty to operators, and in the short term, again, to be able to scale up.
Just staying with that point about the certainty that's required for the investments, and we heard already about the many different sources of EU funding that are available, and Tudor talked about the role of public money and where it can help. And I just wanted to ask each of you, and perhaps Samuel, start with you this time, in terms of where do those investments need to be targeted? Is it, how do we get the balance, and are there differences in what we need to focus on in the short term and what will the long-term investments that we will need in this area? Are there, do you see different priorities for the short and long term? Where do we need to put the focus if public money particularly is to have the maximum impact, the maximum leverage effect?
For me, in the short term, we should build a project at scale. I mean, at megawatt, multi-megawatt scale. And for that, we have to share the risk between the industry. We can take the risk on the part which is for which there is a customer ready to pay for the hydrogen at a value. And the risk or the risk above this threshold has to be taken by the public money, I think. Yeah.
Other thoughts on where public money really makes the difference as distinct and drives that? Because you are all working for universities that work very closely with industry. That is part of your remit. Where does public money need to go? And would you say there is a difference, perhaps this time, Soteria, coming to you first, between the short-term needs for investment and the longer term?
I believe that in the short term, it is important to leverage the already established infrastructure, and research and investment innovation can assist in that end by pre-assessing what is already exists and try to optimize existing practices. So we take the know-how and invest in the long term in more optimal systems.
Thank you. Other thoughts on that, Cedric?
Not very much. I'm more like focusing on the fundamental research. So it's a little bit difficult for me to discuss on that matter, I think. Yeah. Sorry.
Anya, did you want to add anything there?
I mean, yes, of course. I mean, this would be a very important point in research, prioritizing sectors demanding types of energy like green hydrogen, but in comparison to other sources. I mean, we were talking about synthetic fuels, so power to X, biomass, all that stuff. So of course, not every type of energy is relevant for each type of consumer or industry. And of course, there are already projects prioritizing regional wise, which could be important to start with, and then to have kind of a multiplying effect throughout the economy, targeting also other regions and within the country or within Europe. And I think this would be a very important start to start with.
Want to come back on that regional question in a moment, but just on the issue, one of the issues that Tatiana pointed to in her opening remarks and focused quite a lot on the lack of the infrastructure that we need, and a number of questions from our audience on this, and one saying storage also a big issue. Producing hydrogen needs to be localized in order to make economic sense and improve regional energy security. When it comes to infrastructure, so making sure that we have access to green hydrogen at the right times, which is clearly essential if it's going to be used as much as it can be. Do you see a role for yourselves in addressing that lack of infrastructure, in getting the scale up that we're going to need in that area? And Enrico, perhaps a thought from you on this question of infrastructure. Tudor touched on it, but your thoughts on where we go from here?
Yeah, I think on this is why the European Union, the Commission, is pushing so much on hydrogen valleys. Because they see, I mean, the Commission sees this as a way of addressing this problem of lacking of infrastructure. So where to start with? So the idea of creating through hydrogen valleys local ecosystems where different parts of the hydrogen value chain are represented, from the production, also coupled with renewable energy systems, so the production, the storage, and then some kind of users, so it could be industry, transport, or both. So the idea of what we call hydrogen valley, basically it's a geographical area where different parts of the hydrogen value chain are represented, is a way of starting. And then the idea would be to have a different valleys developing, and then these could give the opportunity also to link them if this is needed through corridors. So I think that the idea of hydrogen valleys is pretty much to address the issue of where to start also with the infrastructure.
And Tudor mentioned, so at the moment, I think there are 23 that have been identified in 10 European countries, including the UK. He said the target is at least one per member state. And he also talked about cross-country valleys. What for you, Enrico, just to follow up on what you said, do you think is the key to building them, and how do you see the role of universities of science and technology in terms of getting this mass that we're going to need of valleys in order to really deliver?
Yeah, so just to repeat what Tudor mentioned, is that there has already been some support given, especially through the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, to build hydrogen valleys. And then with REPowerEU, 200 additional millions have been put to have more hydrogen valleys to reach the target of 50 by 2025. And so this just to recap on this, and the role of university, I think they could help in many ways, because they could be the kind of facilitators for all the actors to get in contact. So for instance, there will be a role for public authorities who have to identify where an hydrogen valley could be. There will be probably a role for permitting. So, and then there will be the need to standardize, to define standards linked to this. And in all these parts, university can really have an essential role, not to forget also the need to probably put together different financial sources. So kind of financial engineering because the investment for an hydrogen valley will probably be, I mean, it's very high. So even if some support comes, it's probably needed to put together different sources to cover the whole investment need.
Samuel, how do you see? Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I just want to react on the point. Producing hydrogen needs to be localized. I don't know what localized means, but I think that hydrogen production can be either decentralized, I mean, hydrogen can be produced on the customer site or near the customer site, but it could also be centralized, I mean, multi-megawatt scale in order to decrease the production cost. It can be, and then once produced at a centralized site, it can be injected into the existing gas grid, either mixed with the natural gas or the biomethane as well, or it can be injected into a retrofitted gas grid into hydrogen, just to transport hydrogen. It can also be transformed into e-molecule. I'm thinking about green hydrogen produced in South America, for example, transport it to the European market. And back to storage, hydrogen storage is possible if you use a salt cavern. So I think that storage at scale is available.
Interesting to hear from our universities about how you see your role within these valleys and how you can work to help boost collaboration with regional authorities to make sure that they are implemented in the most effective way possible. Anya, you talked about that regional dimension. How do you see your role within this?
I mean, we tried this already with our role at our university to be very close to the political decision unit, kind of to see what is the need, where do they see problems. They have a special view on industries, companies being there, seeing the energy problems they already face and the transition they have to go, which type of investments need to be done, etc. So we are very close already in cooperation and in the exchange of problems and possible solutions in that. So I think, it's perfectly correct being there a facilitator in this multi-actor, multi-stakeholder issue. And what comes also, what was it before, is the investment needs to be, of course, some support, not only government in terms of subsidies, but also from the financial sector. And there, the European taxonomy, I think this needs to be mentioned, is very important, that sustainable investments, long-term investments, in terms of interest rates and credit-based issues, that they are promoted and that way in comparison to the fossil-based investment, which we fostered beforehand.
Indeed. Please.
No, thank you. I think this is also a major point.
Soteria, Cedric, anything to add on this point? Cedric?
No, I think it's correct. The need for coordination between the different actors. The region is a good scale, I think, to develop those kind of
Cedric,
programs.
what is the key to making that coordination really work? We talked earlier about the necessary ingredients, I think was the phrase that Tatiana used. What, from your perspective, makes that work, the coordination, the collaboration, and what needs to be avoided?
Yeah, I think one of the problem I see so far when we are doing our research is maybe there is a difficulty to go from, let's say, low TRL solutions to higher TRL. Like there's a gap in between, like a lab in universities who are doing some kind of fundamental research that will tend towards like an actual solution, and big companies. And I think the region scale could be those regions could, those hydrogen valley could be a way to actually help developing some new technologies, or to try some new demonstrator, as Samuel said, about like building some scale 1 demonstrators. That this is a real difficulty for us in universities, to find the help to build this on a larger scale.
So when we talk about where to target public money, for you, that would be a central issue.
That could be a help, yeah.
Samuel, I saw you when I asked about how do you make that coordination, that collaboration really work. You gave a wry smile. I don't know why.
I fully agree with Cedric. I was smiling because we need what I call business case. We need operational pilot. We need a sandbox. We need things to play with, and for that we have to build them.
And is that happening now to the extent that it should?
Could be better.
And how? Sorry, just to follow up. How could it be better? What do we need to do?
I think we need public support because pilots are quite expensive and business case is not yet here. So we need support from the public or from governments.
Soteria, just in terms of the role of universities in regional hydrogen valleys and this collaboration, any thoughts on that?
not additional. I would just add that also universities can, for example, assist in developing the criteria for indicating what areas are applicable for becoming hydrogen viable, and that in that end they can assist as well in the continuation of the reactor.
Yeah, on this issue of infrastructure, a couple of questions here about leakage. Somebody saying, how many studies from the European partners focus on best practices and how to mitigate H2 leakages? How big is the role of H2 leakages over global warming? And someone else saying, what kind of loss does hydrogen have in a transmission pipe of about 100 kilometers? Can anyone help us with this issue? And not only how much is there of it, but what we need to do to address this. Enrico, can you help us at all on that?
I can. Oh, please go ahead.
No, I was saying that I don't have at hand data on this, so maybe
Samuel maybe seems to be ready to jump in there.
As far as I know, hydrogen has what we call an indirect global warming effect. It means that it increases the lifetime of methane in the atmosphere, so we have to avoid hydrogen leakages. And we at NG just started a research project on that topic. The idea is just to know what are the leakage, if any. So I won't be able to answer to the question related to the leakage on hydrogen transport. So we just start a project on that. The question is, how is hydrogen pipe or assets are leaking? Are they leaking? And if they are leaking, how big are the leakage? But this is an issue for R&D, yes.
Thank you very much, Enrico.
Yeah, just to complete, since this is very recent news, because the Horizon Europe Cluster 5 work program for 2023 and 2024 has just been pre-published. So it's something that I can now say because it has been pre-published yesterday. And one of the topic that in this draft is included is also a study on the overall hydrogen effect on global warming. So a study to go more in deep on what we are now discussing, also linked to leakage. So it was just to say that this has been identified as an important topic, and there will be work on this in the coming years.
A number of issues coming up raised by members of the audience about some of the very specific challenges that we face where recent research and innovation can help us. One, hydrogen is, says the questioner, a challenging light gas to pump. Is the technology to carry the transfer out economically? Does it exist? Another relating to the question of someone saying, when it will be required in big amounts, green hydrogen can only be produced from seawater. How far are we from a sustainable H2 production from this source? I don't know whether anyone can pick up on either of those questions. Quite a lot of detailed questions about some of the challenges. Anya, can you help us? Not on that one, no. We'll leave those hanging in the air. Let us come back on the question of training and skills, because Cedric, it's something you mentioned right at the beginning, and Anya talked about that interdisciplinary. And I think, as if I understand you correctly, you were saying we need to change in a way that we prepare our younger generations for this. What, in more detail, what do you think needs to change, and how do you see your role in delivering that change?
I don't know if it's much of a change, but it's like very often in the system we classify the training courses by discipline, chemistry, physics, mathematics, and I think this issue of hydrogen to me is mixing a little bit of everything, and we need like some very multidisciplinary students who are not afraid to deal with mathematical equations, but also with some chemical engineering, and to have a broad view about this problem, which is a systemic problem in the sense that we have to look for everything and not even accounting for acceptability, which means like a little bit of knowledge in terms of regulations and things like safety. all of that. And I think it's quite different from the way we see the problems. So at the École Polytechnique, we have polytechnicians, so they are studying many different fields, but there is no specific path for like people who specifically wants to work in hydrogen, and I think it's could be also something that students they're quite keen of studying, like not only one discipline, but to look at different aspects of the same problem.
So Tyria, I mentioned at the beginning you're a PhD student. So are you learning, do you think, are you acquiring all the skills you will need for this interdisciplinary world to meet the challenges we're talking about? Or do you think some changes are needed in the way you're being prepared for the world of work?
Well, certainly we need to acknowledge that there should be a multidisciplinary feedback between academia and industry. And for example, at DTU, we also have the concept of industrial PhD and postdoc projects that they are collaboration, and there is among the industry and academia, which also assist in continuously updating skills and the knowledge of the students. So definitely there should be a common path to effectively exchange insights, experiences, feedback, and accelerate efforts towards tackling the climate crisis.
Anya. Oh.
Yeah, I know. Yes, yeah, that's perfectly the point, because this is what we try to do in Straubing, to have this interdisciplinary study program. What Cedric was saying, that we give them, first of all, basic in mathematics and physics and engineering, in chemistry and biotechnology, together with economic topics like governance, how to govern such a scheme, what are good subsidies or maybe harmful subsidies towards the economy, how can we implement taxes, cap and trade, all the stuff. We teach them together with the ability that they can do a business plan and life cycle assessment to see where the shortcomings and maybe challenges within the development of such a thing. We try to work as close as possible with the local industry, having a bio incubator to try to assume what could happen if we scale out the entire technology, at least on the chemistry level. And this together, and this is very difficult to have this on bachelor and master level, to give them enough deep knowledge to know enough in their topic, but also to understand the different languages and the problems which can occur. This is a never-ending story, but I think the only way to train those young people to understand and to talk the different languages and to get the most of the important challenges to solve them.
Thank you. Cedric, you wanted to come back in?
Yes, I have a question. At which level do you think we should teach those students those kind of aspects? Do they have to have a basic training in chemistry, and then they start to be interested into economics and things like that? And like, does it has to happen at the master level or like younger? Honestly, with my experience, I have not a straight answer to that.
Anya, do you have an answer on that?
Pros and cons on all sides. You know, we started with a very general bachelor and very general masters, and then the students could pick up, after having basic courses, they could pick up a major. This has, of course, as I said, some disadvantages, because some deeper knowledge may be missed, which you maybe also need for other job descriptions and possibilities. In the end, we see at the moment the best to give them 2/3 is somehow fixed, and 1/3 they can do a major in economics and biotechnology and whatever, so that they also are able later on to do maybe a PhD in biotechnology, so that they have enough knowledge. But I think this is a demand and supply in terms of knowledge, what is needed, right? At the moment, we need a multi-language student in terms of different disciplines, and this may change maybe in 5 years when we know enough in that topic that we then specialize again. I think that's a circle. At the moment, we need this broad knowledge of understanding and the dependencies on the topic on each other. And then maybe we can go more into the details again.
Samuel, a comment to this conversation and specifically also to your collaboration with the Universities of Science and Technology to make sure that you are working together to address this and adapt in that way that Anya was talking about as we go along, because this is a constantly evolving picture.
I'm not sure we'll be able to answer to your question. I have maybe a question back to Anja and Cedric. Why training a young student on hydrogen would be far different from training someone on natural gas or power production? I think this is the same.
Cedric?
Yes, I do agree, but that's not the way we are doing at the moment. That's the thing. Maybe we can evolve also the way we are training students, because we train them with a major and like maybe they can pick some small topics on the side, but that's not the way we're doing it at the moment.
Let me bring Satir in, and then I want to ask Enrico, because I know this is an issue that was addressed in the REPowerEU plan. But Sotiria, listening to this discussion about when and precisely what is your reaction as someone who's, if you like, at the customer end of all of this?
In terms of knowledge and disciplinary.
And when to bring these different elements in?
That's a hard one. That's a tough one. Maybe it's also based on the individual, and maybe you should just bring it out to the students and then see the reactions and what you get from them if they are ready as an audience. And I'm talking because, for example, I had an engineering background, and then I switched to market-oriented, market-based measures and shipping freight rate, which was completely irrelevant, but was my background. But then slowly I had to adapt, and I see how could I take what was more relevant for me, and I changed that.
Thank you. Enrico, I believe this is being addressed through dedicated programs, which are Erasmus Plus. It's an element of that. It's an element of the Clean Hydrogen Partnership. How do you see the way forward? And do you think there is more? I want to come to the role of policymakers in a more general sense and get some comments from everybody else. But how do you see your role in helping to address these skills issues with the universities, with industry together?
Yeah, as you mentioned, one big project is already ongoing, funded under Erasmus Plus scheme. The name is Skills for Hydrogen. So this is ongoing. And then again, the annual work program for the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking is currently being developed, so we don't know exactly, but it might be also that in the coming year, there will be some funding for hydrogen academia, very likely. So this is what the EU institutions are doing, and then there is the broader work on skills. Maybe the two comments that I wanted to make here were, on one side, I think it would be important to always keep what is already reflected in the REPowerEU approach. So a kind of hierarchy where addressing energy issues. So also for students and for university to be sure that this is clear, because today we are talking about hydrogen, but hydrogen we know is a part of the big picture. So it should be first energy saving, energy efficiency, and then renewables, and then hydrogen and others. So I think this, I mean, just wanted to mention the fact that this has to be absolutely clear and always mentioned. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is that what I heard from industry, talking to industry, is that there is a need for engineers, but there is a lot of need in the short term probably for vocational training and professional development. And so to have the craftsmen, the people knowing how to do things practically. So I don't know what the role could be for university as well in this area, but there is also the need to ensure the recognition of titles, degrees, and also have professional qualifications and certifications which are recognized in different countries. So I thought these were some topics that it was good to mention talking about skills.
Thank you. And I want to talk and get some thoughts from the others on how you see the role of the policymakers in addressing this and other issues, and come back on some of those things that Enrico and Tudor have talked about definitions and so on, the regulatory environment. But just before I do that, Samuel, you were talking about business cases earlier. And one of our audience says, I'm curious to know why the panelists think the business case for green H2 projects has yet to arrive. Green H2, says the questioner, is that price parity with gasoline today. So, so why isn't the business case self-evident, says the questioner, I think.
I saw the question, thanks for pointing it. I'm not sure that green hydrogen is at price parity with gasoline today. To produce 1 kilo of hydrogen, clean, green hydrogen costs about 10 euros per kilo or even more. So the key challenge is, as I've mentioned previously, is to reduce the production cost, the cost of production of green hydrogen, to cut it by maybe 10 times, reduce it, and to reach parity with the blue hydrogen or the gray hydrogen, which is about 1 to 2 euro per kilogram of CO2. So I don't agree with the statement saying that green hydrogen is at price parity with gasoline today. This is not the case yet.
Thank you very much. So I want to come on to, as we move towards the end of our discussion, the implications of all this for policymakers. And there was a question from our audience right at the beginning saying the OECD has been working with the Dutch government and others on precaution, hydrogen development and regulation. And the questioner says, I wonder where the panel see regulation fitting. And we heard both from Tudor and from Enrico about some of the things that are still left to be done in terms of finalizing that legislative framework, in terms of permitting and so on. I just wondered for each of you how you see the role of policymakers. Anya, for you, what do you think enough is being done currently to support the work that you are doing as universities and more broadly the whole of the hydrogen chain, or do you think there is more that they should be doing? How important are these questions of definition, of regulation, of standards? We haven't talked so much about the role of standards.
The role of standards is immense, let's say it that way. To harmonize standards international wise within the European Union is already a big bunch of work we need to solve and to agree upon a standard. I mean, we can measure CO2, but the emissions, but we have to see where are our boundaries, which indirect effects we still take into account, where do we stop? And this is, of course, also how much work you want to put into to measure the CO2, and you have to set boundaries. And this to make you have comparison into that and the savings of CO2 emissions, including there. I think there a lot of work is still ongoing, especially in life cycle assessment. Then standardizing it also with in competition between different energy sources also there needs to be agreed upon. So and then who kind of, we were talking, some of you were talking about certificates or labeling it. So who's the authority who does the checks, the final checks, and is it only CO2, or when we go back to other, like the European Union is doing the diligence due, so social aspects where resources, inputs are being produced. This also needs to be taken into account. And there, of course, we need a consortium who agrees upon certain rules, which are at the moment very important, prioritize them, okay, energy security at affordable cost, full stop, or we proceed further, but this needs to be decided on a higher level.
Samuel, for you, in terms of the policy environment and the regulatory environment and how important this is, and you were talking earlier about the business case, we heard that, you know, talking about the need for certainty in this area and clarity. Do you think we are on the right track? Do you think some rethinking is needed?
I think from an industry point of view, we are on the right track. What we may expect from the policymaker is a stable European regulatory system, and I think we are on track. And we also may expect from policymaker a simpler process to ensure that the subsidies are awarded more quickly, just to make a project happen quickly. So agree, we are almost on track.
Soteria and Cedric, in terms of what more policymakers can do, is it really, Cedric, let me ask the $64 million question, is it really just about the funding and funding the right things and filling those gaps? Or for you at your fundamental research level, is there more policymakers should and could do to support the work that you're doing?
Yeah, what could they do to support us is like we're not trained as accountant, so I think it's difficult to deal with all the administrative work for us. Like we're trained as scientists, and honestly, it's kind of overwhelming, all the program that exist, all the source of funding, and when we get one funding, all the work we have to do around it. We kind of know what we're doing most of the time in terms of science, and it would be a little bit less administrative duties would be really appreciated. Yeah.
So Soteria, is there something more you want from the policymakers?
I would echo Cedric, so I don't think there's anything more to add.
And Enrique, just reacting to that, in terms of your role and where we go from here, and I don't know what the timetable is for some of those completing the legislative framework, answering some of those questions relating to definition and so on. Could you just chart a little bit for us the time frame for addressing these issues?
I'm not the one working on the aspects related to hydrogen, the regulatory framework, delegated acts, the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive. So on the top of my mind, I think there is a hope to have the Renewable Energy Directive finishing the trialogues, so the discussion between the different by the end of the year. But I might be mistaken because I'm not following directly this. Rather, I'm working more on the research innovation part of it. And in this specific context, what we see as still needed and where there is a space for improvement is to reinforce synergies, meaning between different sources of funding, but also especially possible synergies through between funding at EU level and member states level. So, for instance, we are trying to address this issue through the revamping of the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, which is something that is currently going on, under which there are implementation working group. And now what is being discussed is to create an hydrogen implementation working group as part of the new set plan, which will be adopted through a communication in March next year. And linked to this, it's also to make more use of the co-fund that the Commission has, that the institutions has with member states and associated countries. So the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, which published a first call for projects this year, including some projects also related to the area of hydrogen, and which will continue the work. So we will try to push through a new implementation working group in the framework of the set plan, and a bigger use of the partnership to increase the synergies, especially with member states. And then we will continue with all the other synergies that we already mentioned through different EU funding resources and
that perennial plea that we heard Samuel make again there for simplification when it comes to accessing funding. I know a lot of efforts have been made in Horizon Europe and are constantly made to simplify. Do you think even more can be done, Enrico?
On this, I'm really not able to reply. The only reply that I have is that coming from the public procurement sector, I mean, having some experience in public procurement, when it is about spending public money, it's always a bit tricky because on a way, yeah, you want to be as quick as possible and as light in the procedures, but then you also want to be sure that public money is spent properly.
It's that balance that needs to be struck that is always so very difficult. We are almost out of time, but I did want to put you all a little bit on the spot. And we were talking there about the role of policy, but I wanted to just ask, and this may be for you, whether you be industry, whether you be universities of science and technology, but if you had to identify a top priority, a key next step, in order to take full advantage of the potential of all of you, the work that you are doing to deliver the research innovation that we've heard right from the beginning of this session is so important if we are to meet those very ambitious targets set in REPowerEU. What would your priority be? And I'm going to go Soteria, Cedric, and then I'll go to our researchers first, and then I'll come back to Samuel and Enrico. If you want to react in terms of a key next step, I'll give you an opportunity to do so. As I say, it can be for yourselves, or it can be for another actor within this multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary approach. Cedric, as you look to the way forward and to support the work you're doing most effectively, what is the key priority for you?
Yeah, to me, it's the connection between big industries and universities. Like that's, I'm going to repeat myself, but I find it difficult, honestly, on a daily basis, to find the right people to talk to and to find the right kind of program. And also, as Samuel was saying, the kind of program that is reactive enough that we don't have to wait 6 months, 12 months, 18 months just to start the project.
And
I think that's
to a key to doing that, something that would help you along that road.
Honestly, I don't know. To me, it's difficult to see, and also with national partners and European partners, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes, and yeah, it's
we need
difficult.
a sort of
I don't see
the matchmaker role somehow.
Kind of. That would be that would be something.
How to find that and how to make that work. Soteria, for you, key priority and who's it for?
I agree. I mean, multidisciplinary research between academia and industry, but also among universities, like this alliance, the EuroTech Alliance, is crucial to share expertise to enhance and harness the potential of any plan, the power plan, the green hydrogen potential. So I think collaboration and strong partnerships is key.
Samuel?
I fully agree. If I would recommend one thing, it would be an improved collaboration between industry, universities, local authorities, public bodies, and so on.
Thank you very much. Anya?
I agree fully, but doing it on the ground, starting and extending these hydrogen valleys, green energy valleys in total, and to start and that we allow us also to do failures, to wrong things, and then to see and to improve, and this stepwise, but without a lot of bureaucracy. That would be my thing.
Thank you very much. Enrico, do you want to react to what has been said?
No, maybe just to add one thing, which I think has not been mentioned, but it's crucial as well. So I agree with all the other things that has already been said, but circularity, and so the issue related to availability of materials has to be taken into account in research and innovation as well right now, because we don't want to move from one dependency, so the energy dependency, to another one. So this is a very serious topic, a serious issue on which the European Commission is working as well, more on the legislative framework, but it has to be taken into account already in research.
Something one might be able to come back to on a later occasion, but for now we are out of time. So thank you very much to all of you for a great discussion. Thank you to the EuroTech Universities Alliance for hosting this event. And thank you very much to all of you for joining. I don't know, Tatiana, whether you wanted to say a word.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Yes, indeed, I would agree with all the colleagues here that interest from multiple stakeholders and working together at all levels can only help us to accelerate the transition to clean technologies, and clean hydrogen is one of them. And I'm also very happy to see that there is a broader use of hydrogen now in place, not just in the cars, but in many, many sectors. And I think that would encourage investments as well into this so much needed technology. So thank you very much from the EuroTech side. for being with us today, and please stay connected and continue working and collaborating. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you again, panel. Thank you to all of you for joining us, and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.